It's Joe, your faithful host and co-founder of Command Control Power, the longest-running Apple consulting podcast. In case you missed our birthday, we just celebrated our 10th anniversary this summer. For 10 years, we've been getting together each and every week to bring you epic tales of tech support and business management, and I'm pretty sure we've saved a lot of people a ton of time by sharing our struggles and solutions. Starting now, we're shifting our focus to the Patreon community. That means the newest shows will be posted primarily on Patreon. How do you get the latest episodes? Visit commandcontrolpower.com and click on support. Pledge monthly, and you can instantly subscribe to the weekly patron-only episodes right in your favorite podcast app. If you already support us on Patreon, log in there to get your special link and subscribe to the patron-only show so you don't miss anything. Here on the public show, we'll be featuring classic episodes hand-selected for you from our catalog of over 500 episodes, along with occasional new episodes too. And remember, we're regularly releasing new content on Patreon, where you can join our community of supporters starting at just $15 per month, giving you access to the freshest content. We feature dozens of exclusive shows on Patreon where we speak a little more freely about how we make business decisions, navigate client relationships, manage our employees, and sometimes deal with mistakes and difficulties too. Plus, as a patron, you receive access to our entire back catalog where you can revisit classic episodes and learn from colleagues we've interviewed who've shared their own best practices. Visit commandcontrolpower.com and click support to pledge monthly on Patreon. We'd really appreciate your support, and we're confident your business will benefit from the wisdom of the community we've gathered there. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy this episode of Command Control Power.
Security breach detected in your iCloud account. Before using any of your Apple device, we strongly recommend you to talk to Support Advisor on 1-855-548-9681. I repeat, the number is 1-855-548-9681. If you wish to talk to a support advisor right now, please press 1. If you wish to call back later, press 2.
We are transferring your call to next available support analyst. Your call may be monitored for training and quality purposes.
Your call is in a queue and will be answered shortly.
How can I help you?
Hello?
Hello there. I got a phone call from this number saying that I had a security breach with my iCloud account.
You got it just now, right?
No, it came in yesterday.
Yesterday?
Yes.
And you are dialing back to us?
Yes.
Okay. In that case, it is possible that you might have received it because of any kind of virus that is infecting your devices. We can check it, but for that you need to connect your devices to us. Do you have any computer, laptop handy?
I do. How would you know that I have a security breach with my iCloud account, though? That's what I'm not sure of.
Sure. You are telling me that you are having security breach, and I can check that for you.
Well, your
with the help of computer.
No, your phone call said that.
The phone call said that, then it is coming from the Apple server, because you know that Apple don't call people.
Well, it's a recorded message that came that told me to call your number, so that's what I'm doing.
Then, sir, it is coming definitely from Apple support server,
Okay.
the server that we have, and it has found the problem in your account and alerted you to give us a call back.
Okay. So, am I speaking with Apple or not?
Yes, sir, you are speaking with Apple.
Okay. So how do we proceed from here?
If you have a computer, we can connect your computer to the Apple, and from our secure line that we have, we will try to find those problems.
How would we do that?
I told you by connecting your devices. If you will connect your device to our computer here, from Apple, we can take the problem and fix it for you.
Okay. And how would I do that right now? What would I need to do?
What computer you use, Windows or Apple?
No, I've got an iCloud account with my Mac computer.
Okay. So can you go to your Mac computer?
I'm there now.
Okay. You open Safari.
Okay,
You have Safari open.
I do.
Now, what do you see on your screen? What do you have in your Safari?
I have it open right now to Facebook.
Okay. Do you see at the very top there is a white rectangular bar?
Yes, I do.
What is written in that?
Facebook.com.
Clean it.
Okay.
Now type www.support.apple.com.
Okay.
Now tell me, what do you have on your screen?
All right. I'm clicking. It says, welcome to Apple support.
Yes.
And that's you?
So open it. Yes, sir. That's
Okay.
way. I told you that.
Okay.
So in order to connect to your screen, we have to start our screen sharing software.
Okay. How do I
Can
do
you
that?
go to new tab? Can you go to the new tab?
Okay.
And in the new tab, you have to type www.fastsupport.com.
Yeah, to check out the things that what exactly happened and how the
Okay, I'm there.
What do you have on your screen now?
laptop. Do you have any computer or any laptop?
It says establish support connection.
Okay, and below it, it is asking you for your name.
Mm-hmm.
Put your name in there, sir.
Okay, Phil Schilmer.
Thank you for calling the online support. How can I help you?
All right, that's in there.
Okay.
उसका remote लेके बैठा होता था.
Okay. I've got that.
Now,
Remote कर गया.
Now what do I do? Did I lose you?
yeah, no, sir. No, sir. Do one thing.
Okay. I put in my
What
name.
you have to type, yes, you have to type a code. I will create a code for you, okay?
Okay.
The support key.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
Check it out here for you. You got the phone call onto the same number 356102229.
You guys sound really busy.
Wait a minute, sir. I'm providing you a code. I have to create a code for you.
How can I help you?
So the code is 561
Yep.
11463.
Be a possibility, ma'am, that you might be.
Okay, thank you.
So that phone call legitimately came to our answering machine. So I recorded it with the iPhone. You know, immediately when I heard it, I said, well, this is juicy. I'm going to call these guys. That wasn't the only call that I made to them. I really wanted to get somebody to say that they were Apple. Full disclosure, it did take a few tries. One guy I had on the line, because I didn't want to use my home phone and I didn't want to use I could record with my iPhone through my business account using the Ring Central app, but I didn't want to use that, so I figured I'd just go in anonymously on Skype. The first guy I got on the phone, he wasn't saying much. He just wouldn't answer me. In the background, you could hear all this boiler room kind of chatter. You know, there must have been like at least 15 reps all talking at once to different people. And you could hear people say things like, and reboot, and now click the screen, and, you know, giving them all this guidance in the background. So he wasn't saying anything, so I disconnected that. I called the number again. You go in queue. Then they pick up, and this guy said, no, we're not Apple. You know, why are you calling on Skype? Like the recorded call that we're sharing with everybody.
He was on to you.
Yeah. And he said, no, we're not Apple. You're not calling Apple. What are you going to put this on YouTube? He was pretty savvy. So I was really disappointed. Wow. So I said, well, you know, third time's the charm. And this was my third phone call that you heard.
Wow.
So it was pretty delicious.
You finally got one sucker to admit it.
Right. can't be that hard, right? 1 in 3. I don't know if we can extrapolate out, but he seemed pretty willing to admit it. I mean, he didn't just say, yes, that's right. He said, yes, we are Apple support. I mean, you got him to actually like restate it to you. That's,
Yeah, several times. Yeah.
Well, I thought that was pretty interesting, the way they, not only said, yes, we are Apple support, but one of the first things they had you do was open up Safari, confirm you're on a Mac first, right? Then they can give you the Safari instructions and go to support.apple.com. And I'm thinking, well, what's the scam here? Do they think your DNS is hijacked or something like that? But no, they were just having you load the legitimate Apple support page, which somehow, proves that they're Apple support, because they give you like a URL that loads Apple support, and that's somehow
exactly
to the untrained eye, well, that proves it. And then they just have you open up a new tab and go to some suspect site.
That's the common URL to get the LogMeIn Central screen sharing app to run. Actually, I'm misspeaking. Let's go to Assist. It's actually not LogMeIn Central.
Well, same deal. And, just basically they just have you load the Apple support site and then just, put that aside and load something else, and it could be anything. And I think to a lot of our clients, clearly who have been tricked into this kind of thing, and just to the untrained eye, it's surprising, but it's hard for people to tell that this is a scam.
Right. It was very easy to be led through their little web of entanglement, and all of a sudden the guy's on your computer.
Right.
So anyway, we wanted to throw that out and launch with that, just to give you guys a heads up.
Yeah, I'm still fascinated by the fact that if you receive this like auto recording of not even a human voice, that you would think that it's legitimate. I mean, obviously you were doing it for the benefit of all of us, but like I recently got one of those calls about how the IRS is investigating me due to fraud and I should call this number right away.
I've got one of those too, recording.
Yeah, and I'm like, come on. I mean, it's just a automated voice. Why would I don't know. I guess for me, I wouldn't even consider falling for that unless it was at least human.
But you know what was so interesting too, though, is the guy, one of the first things he said to you, he volunteered that. He said, well, Apple doesn't call you. Like he said Apple support doesn't call you. Did you guys catch that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Like he's like preempting what you might have this protest. Like, well, Apple's not supposed to and not supposed to call you, or like maybe the word is getting out. Like sites say like reminder, like our representatives will never contact you asking for your password or something like that. So he gets out there in front of it and says like, as you know, Apple will never call you. Like you called us. As if like that's supposed to set your mind at ease. Like, well, his story checks out. Like. But they did. I mean, they call you. I mean, and it's a scary thing because they say something like, before you use any of your Apple devices, and people are already like paranoid about the cloud and whatever else, and they're probably thinking, it's just introducing just enough doubt. They're a little afraid, and so some people gets the best of them.
Right. What do they call phone call fraud? Don't they call that wire trafficking?
Maybe.
Sounds right. Yeah.
We'll go with that.
So it probably relieves a lot of the legality or the responsibility, the burden off of their shoulders, because the user initiates the call with the call back, regardless of where that message came from. That's secondary. They could just say, well, that's ridiculous. That's not from us.
Yeah, you called us and you asked for support and we charged you. So, yeah.
Right.
The only thing I regret not asking was, is this going to cost me anything?
Well, you can always call back.
Exactly. Or if you'd like to call back, the listener, we'll share those recordings in future shows.
Could somebody set up an automated system where it would call these support numbers and play recordings of novice users basically saying help? I think it says I have 7 viruses. What can you help me? Are you Apple support? And just waste their time, like with the recorded message, just, call the call center and waste their time. Like maybe that's a way to fight this crap.
Do a phone attack like they do with DDoS.
Right. Just like calling calling your Congress people, jam their lines and they have to take notice. I mean, so they'll just hop to a different phone number but I don't know. I think it could be done. I mean, use their automation against them,
For evil purposes.
Right.
Not like they're doing that already. The other day, I got a phone call to go to a client site and install Boot Camp on a brand new Mac Mini. And I figured, I do this for a living. How hard could that be? How hard could that be? So I had a USB key formatted for Windows, I believe FAT32. Go to your utilities folder, run the Boot Camp installer, and it downloads all the support software to this USB key. From there, it takes you through partitioning your drive, and it did that. And then the computer spontaneously reboots when it's completed those tasks. It just kept on bringing me to the Mac login screen. Well, this is kind of strange. And of course, I didn't read any directions. Of course, how hard could this be? So I went through that several times. When I finally did launch off of the Windows disk, I had an external CD-DVD drive, and I put in my Windows 10 disk, and I tried to install it on the partition. It said that Windows couldn't install from this disk because the selected disk is GPT partition style, a GUID partition. I thought that was odd. So I went through the scenario again and went through that several times. I had to do some Google searching and found out that the installer key with the support files for Boot Camp that it makes actually creates this EFI partition. And that's what you're supposed to boot from. But I found it very interesting that when I would reboot the Mac Mini and I would hold down the Option key for the bootloader, I didn't always see this EFI partition, nor does it just boot off of the EFI partition automatically after you run through the Boot Camp installer. So I thought that was kind of strange. I got the EFI partition to show up. I tried to install Windows, and it told me that you couldn't because Windows partition was NTFS. Did some more Google foo and found out that I could just simply use the format button that was presented to me in that window. Then it would go ahead and finally install the Boot Camp partition. But I spent a good deal of downtime trying to make this happen. Apple does have some documentation. We'll include that in our show notes that I found afterward. It was a bit of a frustrating couple hours.
Well, I mean, it's not something we do very often. Well, at least in my case, and it sounds like your case as well, that we do very often. So if you haven't done it in a couple of versions of the OS, things might have changed slightly, and it's like you have to do a little bit of digging. Hopefully you did your Google searching in private browsing mode, so they'll never see that, and you figured it out. But I have a quick question in terms of Boot Camp, and I always like to ask this, is what was their specific reason for not virtualizing and using Boot Camp?
I don't have a good answer for that. I mean, they couldn't give me a good reason, but that's the way they wanted to roll it and convince them otherwise. They have virtualized on their other Macs before in the past, and they clearly said, no, this isn't what they wanted to do. They wanted to do a Boot Camp.
Gotcha.
But I can't remember the last time I installed a Boot Camp partition, and it was by no means intuitive at all. I mean, I could easily see some residential user or business user just get completely bogged down.
Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare. I mean, it's weird that it didn't just work smoothly. It's like it's a supported feature. It's essentially a new Mac. Where did you go wrong? I mean, it's one of those things you just have to be ready to troubleshoot unforeseen issues. But yeah, I also agree, Jerry. I haven't seen that. I haven't had to do anything with Boot Camp in a long time. The last time was I had to help a client kind of get out of the mess of Boot Camp, where they tried to override Apple's supported machine list. This particular MacBook Pro 17-inch was not officially supported. They had to hack plist to allow the Boot Camp assistant to run. They got as far as having the drive partitioned, and it rebooted. Then something like the Windows installer wouldn't run. And so I thought, okay, we'll just hold down the Option key and then boot back into the Mac OS, and we'll figure it out. That wasn't working. Nothing was working. They were stuck with this machine that would boot to bootloader or whatever, but not actually run. So it just ended up being a brick, and no keys would just wouldn't respond to any keys. I said, let's try an external keyboard. What's going on? This is just a MacBook Pro with a built-in keyboard. Finally, after 30 minutes of what is going on, we're trying to reset the PRAM, we're trying to do a safe boot, nothing whatsoever is working. Recovery mode, everything. This actually now is sounding like a keyboard issue. Is there some kind of problem with this keyboard? And they said, well, yeah, we noticed that some of the keys weren't working before we started off on this, this key or that key. And sometimes when you'd go to type your password, you'd click on your name and it would just show ZZZZZZZZZ, the key being held down. They said, you could click and delete everything, then you could type. Yeah, this is clearly a keyboard issue. So that got us stuck. So we had to actually open the machine up, disconnect the keyboard, use an external keyboard to then be able to get it to boot back into Mac OS and change the startup disk and all that stuff. But And we had to replace the keyboard because it's just the keyboard was clearly had seen better days. So that was my last experience with boot camp, and it was basically like abort the mission, get out of boot camp, and go on with your day. So that's I'm glad you got through it ultimately in your case.
This support document, which we'll include in the show notes if you're listening to this and you ever have to do it, should get you through it pretty quick. Don't do as I do.
Right.
Well, you go through the suffering and everyone else benefits.
That's right. That's why we listen to the show. Your pain is our gain.
Right. So I put a call out in one of the last shows for non-ACN members, consultants out there who listen to our show, Command Control Power, who are not members of the Apple Consultants Network for whatever reason. We sort of assume that the vast majority of our listeners are ACN members. The three of us are, of course, longtime members. We three see a lot of value in the program. Well, I'll speak for myself. I don't have any intention of discontinuing that relationship with Apple anytime soon. But I thought it would be interesting to solicit some feedback from our listeners and just get alternative perspectives. And a few people have written in, so I just wanted to kind of renew that call. If anyone out there has any feelings on this, or you're considering joining the ACN, but you have some reservations about it, or let's say on the other side of things, if you're a happy ACN member like we are, feel free to write in as well and let us know what makes you happy about the program, what value you get out of it. Maybe we'll share some of this feedback on the air as well. So just another call to listeners, ACN members and non-members, write us your thoughts about the ACN program.
I seem to recall that you're on the advisory council, Joe. It seems to me like you're using command control power as you're leveraging us for your own evil purposes.
Evil purposes, yes. Well, actually, that's a really good point, Jerry. I am on the ACN Advisory Council. I should make it clear that this has not been solicited by Apple. This is just my own sort of curiosity that led to this call out to listeners. So in all honesty, I'm not speaking in any kind of official capacity. Not that I have any official capacity whatsoever. But yes, I am on the ACN Advisory Council, which makes me a little bit more curious about people who are members and who are not members. But it's not anything that Apple has, officially or formally or even informally asked me to solicit. So I'm speaking as a lay person today, a colleague, our fellow ACNs and non-ACNs.
All right, we'll let you off the hook. Does that sound okay, Sam?
I don't know. I'll have to think about it. I recently got a call from one of my longtime clients. They've been with us, I'd say probably better part of 8 to 10 years. So it's been a while, and always had a really great relationship. And initially it was me who would always go on site, and then eventually Matt as things shifted around, and things were always running smoothly. However, they were never interested in this whole MSP model once we started to implement it. They very budget conscious, as I'm sure we know a lot of those clients that are like that. I could never present it to him in a way where he saw the benefit of it. Even one time when they had a major issue with a computer, they couldn't figure it out. And I said, look, let's just throw Watchman on there, even though you're not paying for it, and let's see what comes back. And as it turned out, it had a failing hard drive. Thank goodness that we had that tool available to us. And I said, look, this is a perfect example of how little tools like this can be perfect for you guys. They never really could see the benefit of it. And lately, there have been some frustrations about all these little issues popping up. And we've, like I said, since we go back a long ways, he'll always make it a point to have open communication and check in with me and say if he's not happy or if he's happy. So it's not like this was something that was building underneath and we weren't aware of. I'm going in a meeting tomorrow, actually, to discuss this with them, because I'm kind of at the point where I'm a little bit tired of hearing about these little things, how we have to jump to clean up the mess or put out a fire when it's something we could be more proactive about. I'll give you another example is someone was having a mail issue at the office, and this is how badly it's handled there. And we looked, and that particular computer was still on Mavericks. And I said, look, I will call him John. I said, John, I know you want to be in charge of doing all these upgrades yourself and stuff like that because you don't want to spend the time, but this is getting a little ridiculous. Because the first thing we're going to do is look to upgrade that computer and make sure that we can upgrade the mail database and make sure there's not an issue with current versions. And for this to be so out of whack that you have computers that are completely not standardized, and then we have to jump to it, we're going to spend at least an hour upgrading that now. And that's a waste of your time and my time. So the meeting is going to be an interesting one because they're still very tight on budget. And I'm very much now pushing towards the fact that, not that I would ditch them, but we need to come to an agreement here where I understand there are budget concerns, but you guys need to budge a little bit in terms of how we're going to handle your needs in the future, or else it's just going to be a lot of this back and forth again.
It's a challenge to deal with clients like that. If you finally throw the gauntlet down, what we've observed with other ACNs that have been on our show and other people providing managed service support is there's that onboarding time. Your managed service care doesn't really begin till you get that computer on the revision that you want to see it on and working before you can even deploy your managed service plan. So I would not cut yourself short here and just make sure that you've built in time with this client that they're going to pay not necessarily the managed service rate, a rate just to get the computer up to speed.
Make them pay, Sam. Make them pay.
He's also one of those guys that considers himself fairly tech savvy, and you know how that goes. And so it's just an ongoing frustration. He's actually now going to retire, and he's been running our relationship with the business, and he's been onboarding a new person to take his spot. And that's part of what the meeting is about, is to kind of see the old guy out and see the new guy in and discuss our ongoing relationship and how things might adjust. So who knows? This new guy might be totally into it because he manages the budget. But the way I worked it out, I was looking at the numbers, and it's like not double their annual cost, but it would be up there. And if we went with the MSP model, because they use us so infrequently and these little things happen. So if they wanted to, even if we did a minimal amount of hours per month plus, our product suites on there for maintenance and monitoring, it's going to jump their cost considerably. So that's going to be an interesting conversation to have.
When you use the phrase up there, I want you to point towards the sky.
Oh, I did. You didn't see it, but I did.
Okay.
Two things come to mind there, Sam. I think I'm hearing Luis Geraldo's voice in my head, of course, as we often do.
Don't we always?
Managed services conversations. But, where you say that, their cost is going to increase quite a bit, in order to provide them with that better service, the monitoring and maintenance packages and of course, the hours that you see them needing to get good support, that's going to cost them something, and maybe it's double what they're paying now. But I think that not paying that managed services price costs them something. Maybe there's a way to make the case that how much downtime that we could have prevented if we had you up to date, did that cost you? You were down for half a day because your software is out of date because you guys were just kind of, managing it yourself. What does that time cost? I mean, look at that over the course of a year, and maybe it helps bring those two numbers a little bit closer.
Always a valid conversation to have. I think that's part of what we bring to those types of discussions and why we've been able to move over so many people. He's been a particularly hard nut to crack. He's been easy to deal with in one way, but also very stubborn in terms of understanding the next moves or understanding technology has changed since he's understood it in the past. I mean, going back to it, we talked about they needed an application only available for PC, and I talked about using VMware, and he's like, well, I looked at virtualization and it was just terrible. I'm like, that was a million years ago when we first started working with, I remember that.
Soft Windows.
Yeah, I'm like, a lot has changed that you should probably consider, because instead he wanted to set up an old PC that they had in the office and set it up for remote access, and each person would jump into that remotely when they needed it. And I'm like, oh, man, you're just dealing with so many other issues abound when you want one shared PC for like 3 or 4 different people to jump into at different times throughout the day to use this Windows program. So it's just a lack of understanding. Sometimes it's hard to deal with those stubborn people.
Just to make the point again, I think it's diminishing returns where you're going to be responsible for trying to support one of these old clunkers that hasn't been brought forward and hasn't been updated and maybe exhibiting all kinds of problems. And inevitably, you could spend several hours trying to get a machine like that up to speed, and you could end up, as Joe often says, off in the weeds. And all of a sudden you've spent like half a day trying to update an iMac because it's all of a sudden now it's exhibiting drive problems, and you're faced with that dilemma like, can I bill the client for these 4 hours that I've just spent just trying to upgrade the machine to El Capitan or Sierra?
I think that's inevitably the way this has to go is you just have to say yes to that question. Should I bill the client for these 4 hours? You just have to bill them. And once they start to see the real cost of support, one of two things is going to happen. They're going to start to realize that this managed services plan would be a much better deal, or just simply make it more predictable rather than these random, very expensive bills for what they hoped were simple tasks. Or they'll walk away because it's too expensive and you won't have to dealing with an inefficient client anymore. Easy for me to say, but it's hard. I'm in the same position with clients like that, Sam. So it's not exactly easy to do.
Part of my mind has gone so much to the MSP way that I'm often easily frustrated by this, more so than I was in the past, because I see the benefits. I'm dealing with it on a large majority of our clients, and when I come across a client we've had for years and doesn't understand it, it's frustrating immediately for me, because I'm like, yeah, I'm going to bill you, and yeah, you're going to be frustrated by those bills. You're going to be annoyed by those bills coming in, and that's the whole point. And yeah, I'm not shaving time off to make it any better for you, because that would defeat the purpose of what I'm trying to show them here in terms of MSP being more effective.
Right.
But it does grow on it. It's just every little issue that can take an hour instead of 15 minutes starts to pile on very quickly. And they have a lot of little issues because he tries to tinker. So.
And how many times have we had Mr. Customer say, well, if I knew it was going to take 4 hours, I could have just bought a new machine.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I hate those, man. How many times have you heard those? It's the worst. It's like, yeah, I know, buddy. Well, how about you pay my MSP rate and we'll be done with it?
Right. Well, that's the other thing that came to mind, Sam. You mentioned this guy was on the way out, basically like onboarding his replacement and that kind of thing. And I've had success in situations like that where, you can use that situation to your advantage, inflate his ego a little bit. We're going to be losing John and all of his, institutional knowledge, and we're going to need to be able to step in, and you guys are going to have even more of a need for reliable, at your service technology consultant, because you won't have John anymore here, with all of his, everything he brings to the table, whatever, and then maybe he becomes a little bit like your ally in this whole thing, and maybe he says, we really need to, you guys should budget for this when I leave, because this is just how much I was doing for you that you didn't even notice, and that kind of thing. I mean, maybe your interests are aligned at that point a little bit more.
I like that approach. Just pat him on the back a little bit.
Right. In fact, the rate is going up, way up, because now that we've seen what John has really been bringing to the table, we see just how much we're going to have to do to keep things running as smoothly as they are right now. So the MSP rate just went up.
Great point. Most recently, we've been in contact with a client who has had some concerns about employee productivity. I reached out to the Mac admins community on Slack to see if anybody had a solid recommendation to do some silent monitoring on Macs and PCs. One of the Mac admins did suggest taking a look at a product called ActiveTrack, spelled ActiveTrack, and it's activetrack.com. Signed up with them, and they offer a product that has a small, lightweight client that you put on Macs and PCs. It's been working pretty well. It's a SaaS-based, so of course the control panel's on the web. It can track what the employee's doing on the computer, and it has certain pieces of software that it puts into productive time versus non-productive time. The web version of Tetris on your computer is considered to be non-productive, so we're seeing a little bit of that. The other thing that it can do is you can specify. It can't actually monitor things like chat and email per se, but you can specify that when an application is open, it could start taking snapshots, and you can specify the rate of the snapshot. So that's pretty cool. So you could say, well, if chat's open, start taking snapshots every 10 seconds. And so you could do a little bit of employee monitoring that way. So it's worked out pretty well for my client. So I just wanted to throw it out there. If anybody has a client that would like to do a little bit of monitoring, and I think the cost to get to onboard it, I can't quote you per se, but it's not a very, very expensive piece of service to sign up with. And it's worth kicking the tires. I believe they have a free trial. We had another request from another client to do a full restore from Crash Plan on a user folder. Have any of you guys done any full Crash Plan restores, not just single files, but a whole entire user folder?
Not the whole home folder, but wow, yeah.
I don't know what your experience has been, Sam, but I just wanted to put this information out there that they're not particularly fast. So we had, for example, a 250 gigabyte user home folder. We were getting download speeds from Crash Plan with nothing else running. We set up a separate Mac to just do this recovery, 4.5 megabits per second. Yeah. So that equated out to about 4.5 days. I don't know if any of you listening offer your own software backup services, nearline backup. I know Joe and I we still do have Crash Plan Pro E servers for certain clients that we find that it's a good match for. And it recently, and we could discuss this at some other point, Crash Plan did announce that they're discontinuing the ability for people to roll their own Pro E servers. So that's going away.
On Mac in particular, I think.
On Mac, right. So there might be other solutions out there, but this is a real strong selling point to a client if you're offering backup service and they say, well, why should I pay you X amount of dollars a month where I could just go to CrashPlan or Backblaze and pay $60 and it's unlimited. Why do I need that? Well, this is why. Because sure, you've got recovery, but you're not going to get your files back for at least 5 working days. And what does that represent to you? Depends on the size of the folder, but
it's atrocious restore time, though. A few months ago, I mentioned it on the show. I had a similar thing, Jerry, and it took me, I think it was 3.5 days to get all their data back. And it was rough because this was actually centralized server data that someone mistakenly deleted. So they were like kind of down completely for 3 days.
That's roughly the rate I've seen, 4.5 megabits on average, and that's not very much, something worthy of consideration. And also, if in fact there becomes some solution that evolve out of the fact that Pro E servers for Mac are going away, and you still have clients, or you were always thinking of maybe doing nearline backup for some of your specialized clients who need fast restores, I think there's still a strong case to be made and a business model here to do that. And perhaps some solutions using either a Linux-based server will come out of this.
I would be up for that if somebody puts together really simple instructions for running CrashPlan Pro E server on Linux installation. Maybe there's like a virtual box kind of like automatic download that could just run it. That would be, I could see deploying that on a Mac here, like in a virtual machine. Sort of slowly getting out of that business. We're definitely not promoting it to clients. We do have some clients, still using it. We do offer it as part of our CyMac Prime, managed services plan, but it's more expensive than, say, Backblaze, which is our go-to recommendation for basically everybody. It's here. It's low. You can come knock on my door. Your data is here, and it's local, and it's fast, and we can restore it to a hard drive and physically bring it over, and we can oversee the restoration as part of this plan that you're subscribed to. I mean, that honestly, that very rarely, if ever, has come into play over the years for my clients. It's a good pitch. I don't know if the value is really there for us to be continuing to maintain this system and this service ourselves. I might still manage like a Backblaze backup for a client. I'm considering doing that instead of running my own server ultimately, where we could include offsite backups still as part of our plan, and maybe they'd be managed. They'd certainly be monitored by us through Watchman Monitoring, and we could just resell Backblaze licenses essentially as part of our managed services plan. And that way we don't have to maintain the infrastructure. I'd be curious if anyone has tested this, like a full home folder restoration from Backblaze, Jerry, to compare to your experience with CrashPlan. But they're supposed to have much better bandwidth up and down.
Yeah, I'm not quite as bullish on Backblaze as I once was. I recently, as I mentioned on a previous show, got bitten by the fact that you are not able to extract that much historical data from Backblaze, and I had this perfect storm where I was looking for this one client folder and I couldn't get it. I'm more bullish these days on CrashPlan and just the way it works. So I'm willing to suffer through this, and I think there's a real compelling case to be made based on that. The fact that CrashPlan can go back further in time, that CrashPlan would be the one to choose, being the fact that they're both the same price. And additionally, I think that there's a strong case to be made for an attorney's office, a doctor's office who needs fast restoration of their data, offer a nearline service. This is only a prediction. I don't have a crystal ball in front of me, but I think that data in the cloud, breaches in security are just going to become more and more prevalent, and people are going to be asking these real tough questions.
People seem to respond to the concept of the private cloud pretty positively, especially in this climate, where everybody's afraid of the cloud. People just say things like, "I just know I don't want any of my stuff in the cloud." And it's like, well, you do email, right? That's like you're using Gmail. I mean, that's a cloud, so to speak. So I mean, you have to have that very subtle discussion with them sometimes. You can sort of bypass all of that and just say, like, we offer private cloud backup. It's like our private offsite backup service in our private cloud. People just kind of get that. It's like it's the cloud, like they're getting the same service, but it's your cloud. It's private. It's managed by you, the consultant, and you allow only certain people in. And I think people kind of get that. So yeah, you're probably right that there's still going to be a really nice market, maybe even more so for this type of self-hosted service. I just feel like, if I'm promising a client, well, you can get the data, it's right here in town, you can knock on my door, we can turn it around so quickly, like, then I'm on the hook for following through with that, and like what happens, Sherry, if you're out of town, you're traveling for a week and the client says, I need my home folder restored, and it's there on your private cloud, backup in your office, and you're in Europe or something like that. What would you do?
Hypothetically speaking.
Yeah, right. Hypothetically speaking, I mean, that's right. That's my concern over the years is, I have an office, I have people here, and yet, still, I'm not sure that I want us to be responsible for following through on that promise of like, same day or next day or whatever, like turnaround for that.
Or let's say I was at Burning Man.
For example, yes.
For example. Point well taken too, Joe. I realize that there's a lot of responsibility that comes with maintaining these nearline backups. Absolutely. So,
I mean, if you were away, Jerry, you could just call one of us, say keys under the mat, and we could go in and help you out.
Password is password 123, dive right in.
As long as the dog doesn't break the skin.
The alarm code is 1234, and the same thing will get you into the garage door. I'd love to take a minute to thank our sponsor this week, Watchman Monitoring.
So Watchman Monitoring is a monitoring tool that you can not only install on your computer, but on all your client computers. So once you sign up, any client that you add to your Watchman account shows up in your control panel. Watchman will monitor server software. So it'll take a look at things like Daylight, Carrio server, Lightspeed server. It'll make sure that those servers are working properly and backing up. It'll make sure that your Time Machine backups are working properly. It integrates seamlessly with products like Backblaze, CrashPlan, Carbon Copy Cloner. It will monitor I/O errors on disk drives. It'll take a look at RAID systems. It monitors network system performance, detects malware, and also can give you great reports on clients that you have on your network. So if your client is looking for inventory on all his machines and they want serial numbers and specs, Watchman can deliver that to you as well. It's invaluable, and we don't know how we run our businesses without it.
Watchman Monitoring is your main interface, with your clients for your managed services practice. It's a real cornerstone. It's true. It's a big aspect of that. And for a lot of people, I think it should be the first piece as you're building out your managed services offering. You almost can't do it without Watchman Monitoring. Before Watchman, I just remember having to corral all these disparate email alerts from all this various software. Carbon Copy Cloner is telling me that a backup failed, and Carrio is telling me that a license expired, and you just have to like figure out how to manage all that stuff. With Watchman, you just have one portal. You have one place where you can go in and you can say, I don't want to know about this again for 30 days. Don't bother me again for a little while in this issue. Or you can go through and you can just get a list of all of these little issues, either by client or by machine or whatever the case may be. So it's just such a great way to have a centralized dashboard where you can see just what's going on with all of your monitored systems. It's just a fantastic piece of software. Highly recommended. WatchmanMonitoring.com/command control power. Thanks again to Watchman Monitoring for sponsoring Command Control Power.
Speaking of TeamViewer, how many times do you engage in a remote session with a client? They give you the code and then they close the window.
This is not quick support. This would be like just the TeamViewer app. You just have them download the app.
No, generally quick support, they'll do it more likely. This seems to be a recent kind of phenomena that they keep on doing. And because I wasn't plagued with this in the past, but I just can't figure out what the psychology behind it is. They've downloaded the app, they've got this window open, they've given you the code. Why do they close the window?
I think it's like, when you go to somebody's house and they start cleaning and they start putting things in drawers and like tidying up because like suddenly they can see like there's somebody in the house and this place is a mess. It's kind of like their computer, you get connected remotely and then you're still not really like driving yet because they're clicking and closing everything. Like I think they just like they see you, they know you're about to connect and they just have this instinct to like close everything, just start closing windows to clean up, I don't know, and maybe that's the first one that comes to mind. They're just like, okay, you got the code, and they close it, thinking that they don't need it for some reason.
Yeah, get the naked pictures of themselves off the screen, and then close the quick support window. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, right. TeamViewer Quick Support, I have mine configured to automatically add them to our queue, our shared queue, when they open Quick Support, like our Quick Support app. So they don't need to read us the code or anything like that. they just open TeamViewer Quick Support, and then we see them show up under our, like in our case, it's our little SOS queue. And then you have to right click on their name, and then you say assign to me, and then you can double click, or if you want to control the screen or request permission.
Oh, press the connect button. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So instead of doing the having them read you the number, but they obviously they still need to leave the app open. That's
right.
Yeah.
My thing with them is they go to they click our link to download it, and then they always say, "Oh, it's not loaded yet." Because it says like not loaded yet ?
Yeah.
And it's like they see that and they're like, no, it's not loaded yet. I'm like, look in the downloads window. Have you ever downloaded something on your computer before? It's not your first day here. Like you just go to look in your downloads. I don't know. I get. It's just strange to me that people don't have understand this workflow about downloading.
Yeah, I agree. I try to keep it under control, but there's definitely smoke coming out of my ears. You're already 15 minutes into the support call, and you're still trying to get them to download an open TeamViewer and give you 9 digits. It's rough.
Speaking of rough, have you guys ever tried to use eBay Valet? So I was trying to sell my old iPhone, and this is how old it was, and my old iPhone 6 Plus. I went on eBay to see what the going prices were and stuff like this, and they start advertising, try eBay Valet. So I click their little promo link, and I read through the instructions, and it says, sell your iPhone 6 Plus for the most cash, *. So then you go through these steps, and it says basically you let eBay sell it for you. Put in the specs, iPhone 6 Plus on AT&T, comes with all the accessories, it comes with the box, blah, blah, blah. And they give you an estimate on what it's likely to sell for. And you can choose whether to list it yourself or, send it into Valet. And so if you choose to go ahead with this, they send you the box, stick it in the box, and you ship it out. It's all prepaid and all that stuff. So they're supposed to then list it for you, and then you get 80% of whatever it sells for. So I figure, this protects you from dealing with buyer questions and possible, scams and things like that, where they just kind of facilitate the process for you, and this should be really nice and easy. So I did that, and this was months and months ago. I can't even remember. It had to be 6 months ago. I'm thinking in the back of my mind, whatever happened with this? Where's my money for this thing? Is it even for sale? What's going on? Did I get scammed? Was that really eBay? It's just because there was almost no communication. And I mean, aside from the fact that they had received it, by the time I checked on it again, it was listed for sale. The sale was ending in a couple of days. There were no bids. It was the 11th attempt or something like that. It was the 11th attempt at selling it. So what they do is they list it for sale, and they list supposedly some kind of competitive price. Then it's just up to whether it sells or not. And they had done this apparently 11 times and never sold. And finally, I get a letter from them a few days later saying, hey, your phone never sold, so, what do you want to do with it? We're going to send it back to you. So, it was they basically held my phone for 6 months or something like that. I get nothing to show for it. Now I feel this phone, for all I know, has been intercepted by some 3-letter government agency. It's I don't trust the phone anymore because it's been in some scam eBay service for 6 months.
And it's been devalued because it's that much older.
Right, exactly. Right. Now I can't get 80% of whatever they would have sold it for. If I sell it myself, I'll probably get less than what they were quoting me or expecting at the time.
What a joke, man! That's crazy.
Terrible. Yeah, I just didn't realize that it might just not sell. You'd think it's sold by eBay. They know what the price is to put it at to get it to move. They had 11 tries or whatever, and it just never sold. So that's what a waste.
Yeah. Honestly, that's pretty odd. I mean, iPhones sell so easily, and this is eBay's business. I don't even understand how they can't sell the phone.
Yeah.
And did they whack you for the service, or potentially if you had signed up for the service, could you have had to pay for that?
I don't think I had to pay anything. I think that was all part of their, they keep 20% of the purchase,
winnings.
The selling price. Yeah. Right, the winnings. So, I mean, that goes towards shipping me the box and whatever. Yeah, it just didn't occur to me that was one of the possible outcomes. I'll send it in, and then after months and months, have nothing to show for it, and they're going to send it back. Given the choice, I would have said, can you knock $20 off the price? Let's try to just get this thing to sell here,
There was no communication back and forth. Well, it's probably all automated. That's why.
Yeah, so don't use eBay Valet, would be my advice.
It's the moral of the story.
Right.
The other service that's out there is Gazelle, and they don't necessarily give you a great price, but there's no fuss, no muss. You just send it in, they give you your money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I had compared that, and of course, eBay was supposed to get a little bit more, Of course, there was no guarantee because it all depends on the selling price, but it looked like I could stand to, sell. And it was like an experience, that I could hopefully, I was hoping, this would be a new method when clients ask me, what should I do with my old phone? Well, try eBay Valet. No, don't do that. So that's I guess I did learn something after all. It wasn't what I expected, though. But we've had some experience selling on eBay recently ourselves, just directly, and we've been able to move some older equipment. Sometimes it sits there for a while, but like we had this 6-port FireWire 400 hub, and seriously, like it was new in the box. It was something that I'd bought for a client or whatever, like years upon years ago, and sat in like a bin somewhere, and I just was too busy to do anything about it when it never went to the client or whatever. And just that and other things like it have just been sitting around, and so we've just started listing some of the stuff on eBay. I think we got like $100 for that, for like a FireWire 400 hub. If you have,
I'd give you $100 just to not
ever talk about it again. Yeah, exactly. No, that's what I've said too. Like we have old cables, we have old FireWire. Speaking of FireWire cables and stuff like that, and I mean, I would take $1 or something, or just if I knew it was going to be put to use, I would say just have it if it doesn't cost me anything to ship it, just to rather than throwing it out. I just don't have the heart to like throw out all this this new in the box old crap,
Well, I had reached out to you guys via text. What about doing some sort of a boot sale this summer?
Yeah,
combined 3 offices boot sale. People would fly in for the event.
Exactly. Yeah, we can do it here at CIMAC.
That sounds great. I didn't hear back, so I assumed you guys thought it was another one of my harebrained ideas.
Well, honestly, the eBay method, it works. I mean, I'm a new sort of convert to selling, directly through eBay. I just never thought it was worth the effort, and there's always this risk and stuff. But and I did have some annoying experiences. I had something supposedly get damaged in shipping, and then we shipped a second one, packed it really, 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 really well, and then it supposedly still got damaged in shipping. It came back and showed evidence of the buyer having removed and reinserted the drives in this RAID we were selling and stuff. And I think it was a little bit of a scam. The guy sounded like somewhat reputable, like he was saying all the right things, but just physically it couldn't have happened in shipping. It was so, and the end result was he just sent it back and got a refund. But so it was kind of a wash, but really annoying to go through it. But ultimately, I mean, I think if you can sell old stuff and get some cash for it, how would you foresee that working, Jerry? Like a garage sale kind of thing for us? I mean, it's a very limited market, for this kind of stuff.
Well, that's just it. It wouldn't have wide appeal. It would have to be some more generic stuff that could be used on a Mac and a PC. So we would end up sitting there all day and probably.
So it is a harebrained scheme.
Probably have enough for beer and a pizza at the end of the day.
Right.
And still stuck with a pile of stuff. So scratch that idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, eBay can be a real mixed bag. I think you're right, Joe. If it's a specialty item and there's still some market for it, desirable. I remember, just for example, and this was years ago, the Apple camera that Apple used to make that went on the iMacs before, or the display panels before they actually had embedded cameras in them. That iSight camera went for hundreds of dollars after Apple discontinued it. And it was a pretty hot ticket. Certain things are still desirable, and other stuff is just you can't give it away. And sometimes it's not even worth the time and effort just to even attempt to post it. We had a brand new Doxy scanner, and there's another company out there, kind of a lesser known brand than ScanSnap, and it's called Doxy, and they're small portable scanners. Brand new in the box, never used, was sent for evaluation, couldn't sell that. Just real solid things that you would think would go, even for $20 or $30, and I just couldn't move them. eBay has become this clearinghouse for a lot of junk. Sometimes it's a great resource, really all depends. And then, like you said, you're dealing with the other half of the equation, which is, you get some guy and he starts to use it for a while and he doesn't like it. So he sends it back, and he basically goes through, even if he paid through it through PayPal, the way PayPal rolls, even if you don't buy the buyer protection, you could just basically say, hey, look, this arrived and it didn't work. and PayPal immediately freezes your money. So let's say you were able to collect on something that someone used to pay you through PayPal. PayPal immediately puts that money into limbo. He still has your product because he's claiming it doesn't work, and PayPal has just taken back the payment that it gave you. And I've been in those situations with private things that I've sold. I've had some audio monitor speakers. I remember I sent it to a guy in Las Vegas, and this is exactly what happened, where they were perfect, and I had the original packing crates. He got them and decided he didn't want them, so he claimed that one of the speakers wasn't working. We ended up doing was PayPal immediately held the money, and PayPal says, well, we encourage you to try to settle the matter with the buyer. Right. So what he wanted to do was he pretty much wanted to price me down. So I said, well, he said, I think if you lowered your price by $150, I could probably get this fixed. That's how I settled it, because I was not going to have him send me them back at that point. I mean, they were expensive monitors. I remember the resale value was somewhere around $800. I ended up with like $650 in my pocket, and then eBay still took out the commission on the full amount. It can be a real hassle and a lot of heartbreak and grief that you don't really need in your life if that doesn't sound like fun.
Well, then again,
I hate to bring the show down. You know what I mean? I hate to be down.
Well, then again, it's nice every once in a while to get one of these emails like, congratulations, your item sold. And I'm like, what? Yeah. What am I selling? It's, and it's like a MacBook Pro, like a 2006 MacBook Pro that's been listed for, 60 days or something like that. And it finally sold. And it's like, oh, great. I didn't even remember that I had that up there. And it's like, I just got $100 for a computer. It's probably not really worth that much, but, I'll take it.
I used to sell a ton of Apple equipment on eBay for a long, long time. I don't keep a hell of a lot of inventory or even old equipment anymore like I used to. There were a couple, of course, like Jerry mentions, a couple of things where they'd get a return for someone would say it wasn't working, or they wanted a discount on because it was damaged in shipping or something. But usually it wasn't too negative of an experience. I always made a decent buck, and I always felt that Apple products in general just held their value pretty well.
Well, there you go. 3 opinions. Your mileage may vary, folks. Before we wind things up, I just wanted to thank Sam. I was doing a little bit of work on a server on Saturday, and Sam was there. Sam's the guy, and he was available, after he came back from his 20K run to give me some advice on, it probably was before. Was it before your 20K run?
Yeah, it was before, so I was still alive, yeah.
We talk a lot about Rumpus. We also want to put a shout out to Crush FTP, also a great program. We upgraded a server to Sierra, and it killed all the Rumpus services because Rumpus needs to run web services on port 80 or 443, depending on what you're using. And of course, Apache 2 now is running on Sierra. So you have to kind of roll things a little differently. We'll put the link in the show notes, but John O'Fallon, who's been on our show, he was on show 79. He's the maker of Rumpus. You can check that out, put out updated blog post. What you end up doing is creating another network interface in your network preference pane, giving it another separate IP address on your LAN, and just designate Rumpus to run on that separate specified fixed IP address, and everything is hunky-dory. So your server IP doesn't change its fixed IP address. You just simply create another network interface and just tell Rumpus to run on that. So you're simultaneously running Apache 2, everything is well.
It's really nice not to be the first person to run into that one, huh?
I'm sure.
The fact that there's already an article about it and a solution is figured out, and it's like if you run into that and you are the first person to hit it, that's a time of flailing and kind of fear, I think.
Weeping uncontrollably. Right. And it was great. The client wasn't on site. One of those few clients that I have a key to. I know, Sam, you had mentioned you have several keys and getting access to a client's office space. But the fact that nobody was there and we could just deal with the situation in hand and work through it. Still have to edit the config files. It actually seems to be a more elegant solution. Because before, you'd have to just kill Apache completely.
You were well on your way, I think. I even first got your text. I even sent you the older support article. I was like, hey, did you try this? And you're like, dude, that's server 4. I'm like, oh, yeah, sorry. But then we got on track together, and you're on your way pretty quickly. So I was glad it worked out for you.
Thanks. And you said you had actually done this once before, where you created another network interface, and you had it running successfully.
Yeah, I actually team viewered into that computer while we were talking to make sure that I knew what the heck I was talking about.
Thanks again to Watchman Monitoring for sponsoring this episode of Command Control Power. Go to watchmanmonitoring.com/CCP and you could start your 30-day free trial.